So this happened on Monday.
Major search operation is underway after a helicopter carrying Iran's president and its foreign minister crashed in the northwest of the country in thick fog.
He was not a nice bloke. Associate Professor William Spaniel is an expert in strategic game theory and political science at the University of Pittsburgh in the US, and he produces excellent YouTube videos. He explains why Raisi, elected president in 2021, was so unloved.
Raisi was a hardliner, known by his detractors as the Butcher of Tehran, for his role in the 1988 execution of thousands of political prisoners on the order of Ayatollah Khomeini. His time in office saw a strengthening of Iran's axis of resistance against the West and Western-aligned parties in the region, with alleged increased proxy support to Hamas, Hezbollah, the Syrian government, and the Houthis.
Wow, that's really all the good guys they're backing there. As we've said before on the show, we need to always look at Middle East politics through the lens of the region's two big powers and the cold and often hot war between them. That's Iran and Saudi Arabia. It really does seem like the crash was an accident. Old helicopters in thick fog are not a good mix, and the president's decision to fly was his alone. If it was foul play, it could have been any number of actors. Lots of countries have a beef with Iran's government right now, including factions inside Iran itself. What's important is what could happen next. Back to Professor Spaniel.
I know that it is tempting to say, hey, it was just the president, not the Ayatollah, so none of this matters. But that is oversimplifying things. It matters for here, and here, and here, back to here, obviously, and here, and here, and even here. Oh, and it also matters for this.
Yes, Iran is always on the verge of building a nuclear weapon. So what actually could happen?
In the immediate aftermath, the question turned to whether foul play was involved. Political scientists find such operations particularly concerning, because the absence of obvious attribution makes it impossible to sustain a situation where no one wants to take the opportunity that is in front of them. Here, if so many countries do not like Iran at the moment, someone will be tempted to commit a sabotage operation, given the default suspicion might fall elsewhere. But that ironically makes the likelier suspects tempted to attack, because there is no guarantee that it will trace back to them. And we know from some recent attacks on Iranian targets that this can lead to some more serious escalation concerns, even if a true powder keg has not yet exploded. However, the prevailing theory at the moment is that this is just a case of bad piloting. If the Kobe Bryant crash from 2020 taught the public anything, it is that helicopters and fog do not mix. Now, I realize that this argument is a bit circular, but for the sake of world peace, it is fortunate that the crash happened in bad weather conditions, and not under clear blue skies.
Yes, it is. Given there probably isn't an outside player at work here, the focus falls back onto the implications for Iran itself. What happens next inside the country, which is already experiencing rising popular discontent among young people towards the authoritarian and conservative government.
The crash raises both long-term and short-term political power problems within the Islamic Republic. In the long run, Raisi was a consensus likely successor to Ayatollah Khomeini, and indeed, Khomeini himself took the president to Ayatollah path. According to Iran's constitution, Iran's first vice president becomes acting president once the Ayatollah gives his consent, which he already has done. The successor's politics appear roughly similar to his predecessors, and he comes pre-sanctioned by Western leaders. So that is not the important story here. Instead, the government has 50 days to run another election to fill the position properly. Election days are frightening times for autocrats. If popular sentiment turns too far against the regime, the festive nature of Election Day itself turns into a rallying call for coordinated protests. And unless you can get out in front of them, large protests can in turn result in the fall of a government. Indeed, The disputed results of the 2009 Iranian presidential election led to just such protests across the country, though the regime endured.
All of this could move Donald Trump's Abraham Accords deal between Israel and Arab powers forward, leading to Saudi Arabia becoming involved finally. It's understood the Saudis were all set to join the accord, but then October 7 happened. In fact, one October 7 theory is that Iran supported Hamas to move on Israel precisely to stop the Saudis joining that accord. But we'll really never know, probably. Professor Spaniel says a grand bargain between the US, Israel and the Saudis could be one thing that results from this current hiccup in Iran.
The State Department was already spending much of its bandwidth on that project, with multiple visits to the key players in question. But Israel's offensive into Rafah as a part of the Gaza war will remain a major stumbling block there. Though the Israeli domestic politics on the entire situation is about to reach a boiling point, and any serious movement may have to wait for a new prime minister. Suffice it to say that the gods of international relations chose an interesting time for a helicopter to crash. And, as usual for these sorts of breakpoints, there is a high probability that not much happens, and a low probability that a whole ton of stuff happens, with not much room in the middle for an average outcome.
Yes, indeed. That's Associate Professor William Spaniel, expert in strategic game theory and political science at the US University of Pittsburgh. And you can find his full-length explainer videos on YouTube. Hi, as an Aussie show, your support means a lot to us. So please subscribe here or here. And you can smash that little notification bell so you can keep up to date with all our content, or you can watch a full episode right here. Join us for Australia's best take on the news and commentary of the moment without the woke, and get smart for the weekend and support Australian content on YouTube. To do that, we need your support. So subscribe.